Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
G'day and welcome to an extra marital affair of Thrash and Treasure, the Torture Chamber musical comedy podcast that has long, unwashed heavy metal hair that's as knotty as the Spider-Woman's web of deceit. And speaking of snotty, I'm Aaron, and I'm joined as usual by a former owner of one of the souls I've acquired in the past 3 years. It's Spencer the Broadway Spy. Hi, Spencer.
Going great, Aaron. I'm really excited for today's episode. Big fan of his, and so really excited to get to talk to him.
Yeah, awesome. Well, you've had a big day today. You flew to Chicago. Are your arms tired?
Very much so, but I would say even more so. My feet are tired because these airports are very large.
Are they? Yeah. Were you in line lots? Was there lots of people?
You know, there what for the holiday week that we're in, there weren't as many as I thought there would have been.
Yeah. You're a bit of a Diana fan, aren't you?
I am. I saw it 5 times on Broadway. It is one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had in theater. I met a lot of my very close theater friends in New York because of that show. I continue to still love that show. I actually watched the pro shot on the plane on the way back Chicago today.
You're supposed to be editing on the way to Chicago. Guess what?
What?
We've got another literally legendary literary diva in the chapel off chapel tonight. And since he seems to love himself an extra long title, it's time to give him an extra long introduction. So let's spill the tea about this tea-neck born boy who bubbled away at Rutgers, poring over a degree in English before he leapt on the edge of a cliff to drop his first production like a teabag. And sadly, the Virgin weeps as we follow these creatures we love, lemmings, off Broadway, then over the river and through the trees for a quick kiss at City Hall, at which they all laughed, okay? Leaving me all aggro, plus all shook up. But luckily, this king of grace landed on his feet in Memphis with 2 Tony babes in arms. 2? Oh, greedy. But that's the thing about men, Spencer. They're only as great as the last romance. But at least Ernest Shackleton loves me still. So before I'm triggered into falling for evil again, please help me prepare a huge Aussie g'day and a what's new, pussycat, to this cool cat who wrote the book on the toxic adventures of the dating world, which no doubt helped him prep for fucking men. And that's some nice work if you can get it, right, Spencer? So let's go on chasing the song lyrics of this grammatical genius who spent 2010 creating clever little lies whilst living on love and the art of murder. So before I die and I die again and again from exhaustion, please help me welcome to the Torture Chamber this incomparable icon and frequent David Bryan collaborator who can currently be heard at La Jolla Playhouse with his latest play Babbitt, starring friend of the chamber and Harada, and now extended until December 10th because we're joined by a true legend who knows I love you, you're perfect, now change, Spencer. So put on your fanciest hat and toss your bouquets, privately, please, for the delectably devilish and devilishly delectable Mr. Joe DiPietro. Yay, welcome to the Torture Chamber.
Yeah,
how are you going?
I'm so happy to be here. And I love that you guys are friends with Anne Harada, who is fabulous.
Oh, I loved having her on the show. And it was sort of at a turning point in this show as well, where my introductions were starting to get crazier and crazier, leading to this point. But yeah, so how are you going?
I'm going good. I'm good. I'm good. I was just back from La Jolla, where Babbitt opened, and back in my home pad in New York City, working on another show. So all is well.
Fantastic. This incredible cast, like goodness gracious me, one might say, you have reached the zenith of casts.
Yes.
Matthew Broderick, Anna Klumsky, Julie Halston, and obviously the beautiful Anne Harada. Obviously, it's based on the iconic Sinclair Lewis novel of the same name. So how's the weather in Zenith City? Is it sunny with a chance of a Broadway transfer?
Yes, well, it's definitely very sunny, and there's always a hope and a chance of a Broadway or New York transfer or transferring somewhere. It's a really great cast. We've opened really well there, and it's a great story, and very, even though it takes place 100 years ago, it's very prescient about what's happening in the world today.
Yeah, Well, actually, I got a question about that because it's set in this city of Zenith.
Yep.
And Zenith being a word
Mhm.
developed from an Arabic phrase meaning the way over one's head or way over one's head, which is perfect because everything on this show is way over Spencer's head. Anyways, I've never read the novel, but it's about a middle-aged American sort of in white picket fence America wanting more, which is sort of a pretty common thread or narrative thread that resonates with a lot of audiences, a sort of blue-collar dream of something bigger.
Yep.
But you look at it today and you've got, even with these legendary actors, does it resonate a little bit more in this age of influencers and reality TV?
Yeah, no, because he what I love about Babbitt, both the novel by Sinclair Lewis and the play, my adaptation of it, is the show starts as a sort of middle-aged guy, a bumbling dad, a bumbling husband. We think we've seen him before, and he's sort of reached a point in his life where nothing seems to mean very much anymore, and he starts searching for a bigger meaning in his life. So we've seen that story a lot, and it can be enjoyable. But what I loved about Sinclair Lewis's take on it is that Babbitt, George F. Babbitt, played by Matthew Broderick, starts almost through a fluke giving speeches at real estate conventions, and they happen to be full of a bunch of xenophobic right-wing dogma. And he suddenly becomes very, very popular. He suddenly becomes the man he always wanted to be in terms of popularity. And so the show really spins off that.
Very resonant of today.
Very right now, and the things that Sinclair Lewis wrote 101 years ago are things that are coming out of politicians' mouths right now all over the world. So it's amazingly, ahead of its time. It is amazingly prescient. It's also, I think, very, very funny with Matthew Broderick and our great cast.
Because obviously it's a satire. Well, I say obviously as if I've read it. It is a satire, which is
Yes.
something that I've lamented about on this show is dying in this industry or in this world today, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, no, I agree. It's very much a very biting satire on, American mores and values and American politics. But I also think a lot of, many cultures would understand it. We're all fairly similar in many ways. So, it's very much a satire. It's very biting. It pulls no punches. It goes after the right. It goes after the left. But at the center of it is this man who's really just trying to have a happy, meaningful life like we all are. So it's sort of what I love about it. Matthew Broderick is the perfect everyman center of it. Just a good guy trying to get through his life, and he says things that maybe he means, but not as intensely as other people think he means. So it's a really interesting take on our modern mores and values. And it's, it is an interesting show because I think Matthew's such a likable guy that anything that comes out of his mouth, even things that a lot of us find offensive, we have to say, oh, but I like him. Even though he's saying these terrible things, I like this man. He's clearly a good guy. So I think that's part of the fun of the show, actually.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Sadly, I'm in Australia.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get to see it. It obviously closes on December 10th, but hopefully we get a transfer over here. Are you listening, Melbourne Theatre Company? And invite me to opening night.
Yes, Melbourne Theatre Company.
Goodness gracious me.
Yeah.
But anyways, we'll move on because
you collaborate frequently with rock star David Bryan. So if you could pick your craziest, most over-the-top rock star writer, what would you put into it?
Oh, that would be good. Boy, would I love a masseuse. Is that crazy?
No, we hear that quite commonly.
I would love a nice masseuse. I love M&Ms. So I did read someone at one point only had them pick out like red M&Ms for them. Like they don't have a bowl. So I think like I would like to have all of the colors of the M&Ms in different bowls waiting for me at every stadium that I'm singing at.
Awesome. And not at all anally retentive. I love it.
Not at all. But M&Ms are delicious.
Exactly.
I am I gotta say, I'm a writer, so I'm very creative, and I write a lot of projects at once. So I am very anal retentively organized in my closet with my food shelves, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I can be too, but when it comes to my bedroom, which is also my office, no, there is no organization here. But I really wish there was. Now, have you got any experience with metal, heavy metal, new metal, glam metal, kawaii metal, which is Japanese apparently? And I would love to cover that on the show one day.
I have no experience with heavy metal, I have to say.
Yeah.
It's not my genre.
Yeah, not at all. And you work with David Bryan. He hasn't taken you to a Def Leppard concert or something?
He's taken me to concerts. We've never seen Def Leppard. He does like actually metal, and he likes loud, and Bon Jovi concerts are loud, which are fun.
Yep.
And I mean, our show, The Toxic Avenger, is very much not quite metal, but certainly written to be performed by a New Jersey garage rock band.
Wow.
Just sort of loud headbangers kind of things. So in that sense, that's I don't know if I quite call that heavy metal, but it certainly is good loud Jersey rock and roll, and there ain't nothing wrong with that.
No, exactly. And you know what? I didn't know that about Toxic Avenger, but what I've always liked, because I've never seen it myself, obviously being in Australia, what I loved is that you didn't do a parody. You didn't do some unauthorized parody and just throw a whole bunch of jokes from that genre at it. You took it seriously as a musical, or apparently as a sort of concert type it's by a band, but that's why it has the fandom it has, and it shows in that, because I can't wait to see it one day, or even maybe direct it one day. I don't know, because I love my horror and my comedy horror. So yeah, that's sort of one thing that I've always been really keen to see it, because I could tell that this was not one of these cheesy, unauthorized parodies, which I keep going after on this show. It's going to get me in trouble one day. I know it.
Yeah, no, it's very much, it's essentially Lloyd Kaufman who did the original movie. It's very much the Beauty and the Beast story. And so I just love that. So even though it's a wild, outrageous comedy, we did very much, want to take it seriously as a story, as a love story that you hopefully by the end of it surprisingly root for this couple and feel something about them, even though he's a mutant super freak with toxic powers. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's what you want. And that's the problem with these unauthorized parodies, is it's just a bunch of jokes.
Right.
And you're going in as the fan of this thing. Like, I'm a fan of Friends, so you're getting an overload of 400 episodes or something in 90 minutes. But the only attachment that you're walking out with is to the nostalgia of it. You're not taken on that journey in that musical, and the outcome is so much worth it, that the fandom you'll get from that is genuine. It's not just, oh, I remember those 50 jokes in 1 minute from Friends. What I mean, anyways, we're not talking about parodies, but we'll move on. This week I picked this album because it's Thanksgiving Day week in the USA, and whenever it comes to anything American, I'm thankful to be Australian. Sorry, I love Australia. I have 3 American. I love America.
That's okay.
I love America. I have 3 amazing American co-hosts. I picked a classic Aussie album this week, Rose Tattoos. Rose Tattoo, fronted by a former King Herod, Angry Anderson. So Spencer.
I loved the way you said Rose Tattoo. It's like the best use of your Australian accent.
Oh, Struth, mate. What were we doing? Rose Tattoo, the album. What did you think of it?
I liked Rose Tattoo. It was short, which is good. I love that on these metal albums. This is about as much of it as I can endure. I think my favorite song on the record was The Butcher and Fast Eddie. I loved that groovy section in the beginning. A lot of the lyrics were probably some of my least favorite of any of the albums that we've reviewed on the show and looked at. But I loved the length and thought that instrumentally and vibe-wise, this felt much more like a hard funk record than it did metal. And actually, I would almost go so far. Yeah, they might be a heavy metal band, but this is certainly not a heavy metal record. No, I mean, I liked it. I liked a lot of the guitar sounds on this album, which I don't mention a lot. I tend to focus more on drum sounds, especially as a drummer, but I felt like the guitar sounds, especially in Remedy, were really just a little different for me, which I really enjoyed. I'll give it a 4.3 out of 5.
Wow, I didn't see that coming. What about Angry Anderson's voice?
It was fine. The vocals aren't really what's important to me in this music.
Yeah, okay. Well, Angry Anderson listeners at home may know him from Mad Max 3.
They
Like,
made 3 of those?
They made 4 of those.
Jeez.
No,
And people still
Max.
saw them?
Yes, they're all great movies. The third one has Tina Turner in it, and it has Angry Anderson in it as well. He's the one that gives the finger from the car wreck. And he's also in the 1992 Jesus Christ Superstar recording, which has been brought up a few times on this show by guests, especially from America, who go crazy for that recording. He's the King Herod.
The Australian one?
Yeah, from 1992. And this album was produced by Harry Vanda and George Young, who are from the Easy Beats, two Australian legends in music. So and this was their debut album, I believe. They started off under the best wings possible. 7 members died from the band, including, I think, 3 of the founding members. So literally 7 of them have died. 3 of them, I think, or 4 of them died within a 3-year span in the 2000s. A couple of them from cancer. So, and they've always been sort of a well-known band in Australia, and Angry Anderson has always been very public. Yeah, One of the Boys. That's familiar to me, but the rest of the songs I had no idea about. So and if you had asked me, oh, you've said, oh, look, Rose Tattoo. They're an Australian band. Do you know what songs of theirs do you like? I wouldn't know any of them. That's the thing. They've always been around. They've always been popular. They've never really been in our rotation, I guess. Or if they have been, if I have heard them play or whatnot, songs on the radio, I haven't been able to pick them. So, but I thought the matchup of Rose Tattoos with a marriage, I guess. But yeah, what else? Oh, and Angry Anderson bashed his head on an amplifier in Europe until his head bled. But other than that, it was all right. I'd give it about a 3.5. I think 3. It's enjoyable enough. It was sleazy. I think you're a bit hard on the lyrics. I thought they were okay. They weren't as terrible as what you hinted them being.
I liked it better than a lot of the other ones.
The lyric.
No, just everything.
Oh, the whole album. Well, you gave it 4 stars. I was really surprised by that. Well, anyways, with just a few lines and a face, it looks like the Rose Tattoo has been turned into an ad break. We'll be back after this. From the producers of Thrash and Treasure and airing exclusively on the Bloop Network, around the world in 80 plays, hosted by the adorable Lizzie B and Alfie Parker, and starring the gorgeous Dolly the dog. They'll take you from city to city, exploring the rich arts and cultural history of the UK and Ireland. New episodes air on Tuesdays, and here is a sneak peek.
We're back with Around the World in 80 Plays. I'm Alfie Parker, and that's
Lizzie B.
And this week we're in Edinburgh, Scotland.
Scotland!
Every theatre really has ghosts, but we're in Edinburgh. Edinburgh's known for its spooky ghosts. So why don't you...
Yeah, I've done my research, and I might have had an experience of my own.
Oh.
Right, so, I am a true believer. Alfie is definitely more sceptical, but I believe in ghosts wholeheartedly. I love watching paranormal programs. We watch a lot of celebrity ghost hunters. I just love it. I just kind of think, what's the point in not believing?
Yeah, my issue, right, I want to believe that there is something there. I think ghosts is a nice idea.
As long as they're nice ghosts.
Yeah, as long as they're not throwing things around. You know, no, because they grab me legs and go, bleh. All of that.
That's never happened to you, has it?
No, but you hear stories of them being like, get out of my house, and they're rattling everything and all of that stuff, and it's just a bit...
Oh, please. Right, so anyway, theatre ghosts is a massive thing. So I'd say probably every theatre in the world has a ghost.
Yeah.
But with Edinburgh being such a historical place, the Festival Theatre actually has 3 ghosts. And I had an experience with one of them, which I'll talk about later.
We had a brief experience.
Don't spoil it, okay?
Yeah, sorry.
Right, I'm going to talk to you about these ghosts. So the first one, the most famous ghost at the Edinburgh Festival Theatre is called the Great Lafayette. Lafayette? Hamilton reference for you. That's not who it is, but he's called the Great Lafayette. One of the most celebrated illusionists of the early 20th century. Do you know what an illusionist is, Alfie?
Yes, kind of like disappearing in smoke and, swords. And it's like a branch of magician, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So kind of like Houdini.
Yeah,
yes.
I wanted to say Houdini, but yeah.
Yeah, cool. He was the highest paid entertainer in theatre at the time.
When was this?
In the early 20th century.
Okay.
Do you know when that was?
Do I know when that was?
Yeah, what year are we sort of talking there? Early 20th century?
1920 something?
Earlier. But,
Okay.
yeah.
The 1900s.
Yeah, brilliant.
Right.
Well done. This is going quite well.
I've got my GCSEs.
And apparently he was a very lavish performer. And so that brought the audiences in, which kind of justify that he was getting paid all this money.
Right.
So, spring of 1911, he was performing at the Edinburgh Festival Theatre, and he did his finale, which was called The Lion's Bride. And what he did in The Lion's Bride is he would swap places with a lion live on stage.
I mean, you are asking for trouble, though.
No. See, this is the thing. It's not that went wrong.
Oh, right. Okay.
So this Lion's Bride thing happened successfully, and then out of nowhere, a lamp fell from the ceiling onto the carpeted stage, and the whole thing set on fire.
Oh my!
Because obviously we're talking pre-electricity. This would have been candles.
Yeah.
So fire on stage, whole thing set fire. 11 people perished, including the Great Lafayette.
The lion?
I don't know if the lion perished. The lion probably just went around eating everyone.
Probably.
So, the Great Lafayette now haunts the Edinburgh Festival Theatre, and people have said they've seen him shining his diamond rings in the dark. And apparently, people have also heard a piercing lion's roar.
Right. Okay, cool.
Right, so that's the first one.
Yeah, I don't want to like question you on it because it's like they've seen a geezer with his diamond rings in the dark.
Yeah, and they've heard a lion
At the same time. He's doing that with his rings.
Well, it's not at the same time.
Oh, it's not at the same time.
No. Okay.
That's Lafayette.
That's the Great Lafayette.
Okay, I didn't know anything about
Okay. Number two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you won't have had an experience with either of these because they're very specific to where they are.
Oh, so my experience is with different ghosts.
The peg leg sailor.
Right, okay.
So, here's a bit of history that I didn't know, and it's actually really cool and makes sense when you kind of hear about it. So, back in the day, sailors were hired to operate the flies. So the flies are basically up in the theatre. You have something called a fly floor. Shout out to Leslie Joseph. She loves a fly floor, which has loads of ropes, and it's manually operated, and it kind of brings in signs or flats or bits of scenery. So they're being flown in and out. And back in the day, they would hire sailors to operate the fly floor because they were obviously very good with knots and had experience with raising and lowering sails.
That is actually, and I didn't know that.
Isn't
makes
that so
complete
cool?
sense.
What's not so cool is that at the Edinburgh Festival Theatre, there have been sightings of a small limping figure pacing up and down the fly floor. That's actually giving me chills. That's scary. Because I think the fly floor is probably a scary place anyway.
Small.
A small limping figure, and they've heard sounds of a scraping wooden leg.
You have a wooden leg.
Yeah, the peg leg sailor.
Yeah, who is he?
Anyways, this is my script. We're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Spencer, and we've reached the zenith because we're joined by Joe DiPietro with Babbitt, currently running at La Jolla Playhouse. So I have to ask, the cast seem to be put through their ringer on Instagram. You don't have anything to do with that, do you, Joe? Because I've seen those workout videos. They're dripping in sweat. And I'm thinking, those poor things. They're doing a play, not a musical.
Oh, I saw Anne Harada was posting Good for them. Yeah, the art, but they're doing a play. But our director Chris Ashley has staged it almost like a musical. There are 2 turntables. It takes place on this gorgeous Walt Spangler all white set pattern after a very famous library in Germany. So it really is quite the workout. The play, and it's quite the production. Also because it's based on a book, there are multiple scenes, so we go instantaneously. Chris wanted to jump instantaneously from one scene to another. Yeah, so I actually think Anne and Matthew in the cast are getting their own workout. But good for them. For also, like, La Jolla is so nice, you just sort of want to be in shape, I will say.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite parts about his style of direction is just how well how focused the transitions are between the scenes.
Yeah, and then we have 2 turntables in this one, a smaller one in the middle and a donut right around it. And Chris was saying to the actors who, I was like, you have to get used to it. He goes, trust me, like it's confusing because you have 2. The set keeps you're instantaneously in a new spot. He goes, you just have to get used to it. But once you do, it'll be second nature and it'll be magical for the audience, and it is.
And so I love how it tricks the theater in changing scenes. The other day I watched the making of a musical, and they talked about having all the screens on the stage and how we can change the scene instantly before your very eyes. And I'm screaming at the TV, they've been doing that in theater since before there was electricity.
Yeah.
That's what theater was all about. It was about changing the scene right before our very eyes. We didn't need a screen to do that, you poor kids. Goodness gracious me. Anyways, love the PR company, love the show. Anyways, we're going to move on. One quick question. What's been your experience with standing ovations? Do you feel like they're a bit overdone these days, or that we're really earning them?
No, I love standing ovations. I love standing ovations. As a writer, I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And like, I always think, people pay good money, more and more money to see shows. I sometimes like to stand, by the way, at the end of a show because I've been sitting for 2 or 3 hours. And so I like to just get up.
That's it.
I'm like, oh, this feels so good. Why do I have to do this sitting down? And I think if it's a rousing show that brings you to its feet, I find standing ovations very fun. I know some theaterphiles don't, but I thoroughly enjoy them. And I would like to put that on the record, that I personally thoroughly enjoy them. And I think everyone should always stand at the end of any performance of any show I've written.
Yep. Okay. Well, duly noted. If you're ever in Melbourne and I'm in the audience when you're there, I will stand up.
You'll stand, or I'll give you the evil Italian eye.
I will feel so dirty for it, but I'll do it because you gave up your time to come on my show. That's it. Like,
yes. And then can I ask? So, did you hate standing ovations?
I think now it looks regimental. It looks like the audience is sort of standing up because they have to stand up, and this is the point where we stand up. It doesn't feel like that excitement is there anymore, and it saddens me because, like, the few times I've given standing ovations, like when I was younger, was because friends were in it, so we were really excited for them, but there was at least that excitement there. It wasn't they finished the show, so now we stand up. So I sort of like, where do we go from there if that's the normal? What do we do if that's the normal?
Gotcha. I will say, what I don't like is standing ovations during a show.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, everyone sit down until the end.
Yeah.
Because even if it's a great song or a great moment, like, there's no, clap loud and long. There's no reason to stand, then I think like it interrupts the flow of the show. So, yeah.
Yep, that's it. One thing I don't like is people dancing during the show. So, but I'm commenting more so on Moulin Rouge because there was a guy next to us, and every song that came on, he was so excited and he was dancing along. And I'm like, oh my god, I cannot wait till we swap seats at interval. Anyways, we're gonna move on. While we're in the suburbs, we're meant to still be in the suburbs with Babbitt. We're gonna do "I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change." So I've reviewed it this week. Hi Joe. Look over there. Oh no, I pointed. You were meant to see me point. I've turned the cameras off. That whole joke didn't land, and I've done it like 3 times in this review. Anyways, I'm gonna jump into it. I'll rip off the band-aid. This show's so intimidating to make, I tell you that. Anyways, I proposed we engaged with this dearly beloved review because about 4,722 first dates ago, or 2 years before Spencer was born, we had tickets to see Lady Julia Morris, already a stand-up icon in Australia, perform in this unknown show we'd never heard of. Until I fell sick, and till near death do we depart with our tickets. So I've never had a chance to see or hear any of these songs. So I put a ring on the Spotify, hoping it'd be wedded bliss and not end in divorce. Immediately, with the opening, I could picture what this show is and where it's headed. 2 genders, both alike in dignity, politics aside, preparing for a first date. The nerves, anticipation, needless and necessary tweaks to one's appearance and personality, the battle against expectations, triggered. It's all very familiar, laid out in a whimsical and melodic way. A stud and a babe started, and I felt seen. And single man drought started, and I felt seen. Why? Because I'm a guy came on, and I felt seen until tear jerk gave me sympathetic pains. Oh, wait, tear jerk. Okay, that's very different. I mean, both make me cry. Here I felt that the violin could have taken over in the lead, if only to emphasize the tongue-in-cheek nature of satirizing the awkward world of dating. However, the male piano, female violin vibe works perfectly. I love it. Don't change it. Look over there. As the relationships progressed, I couldn't help but hear and see versatility in these expertly crafted songs. I can hear same-sex couples, mixed-race couples, an expansion of band. Some of these songs could only be enhanced further with a drum or even a ting of a triangle. I'm available for hire. Even interpretation or genre-fying into jazzier, country, blues, even rockier moments. Many shows of this size or even structure haven't appeared so versatile. Even some big shows aren't lendable to much imagination. Let's be honest. Directors and musicians deserve shows that they can take on and interpret. Why? Because I'm a Guy could easily be a barbershop quartet number. Here we have a brilliant songs, a familiar, if light narrative, and a knowing wink-in eye from both cast and audience. However, Marriage Tango commits that most awful of offenses. Legos? Ooh. -2 stars. Sorry. Look over there. But pet peeves aside, this musical benefits from many things which other shows of this kind fail at. We're able to go on a journey with these characters. But I do wish there was maybe 1 or 2 more couples, if only to prove my theory about how flexible this show is, even in its original form of 4 people and 2 instruments. Whilst their vignettes, sure, the richly painted feelings and character development are able to shine through, allowing these songs, and me, the listener, the chance to breathe with them as they progress. But again, Legos, really? 4 stars. Oh, you're still with us? Good.
I'm still here. You don't like Legos.
No. It's not the plural. It's not the correct plural. Lego is the correct plural. But we always hear it from Americans, and it always makes me shudder.
Oh, hilarious. Yeah, we would say Legos here.
Goodness gracious, that's like a ghost walk through me or something. Yeah, so okay, on this show, I love this show because I've lived with a married couple for 38 years. I see a lot of them in it. Although a lot of them is more you change, as opposed to I love you, you're perfect now, change. They're basically just telling each other to change.
That's very funny. The change part. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, so given like what they've done with Sunset Boulevard at the moment, or even with Company, which is something that I have contentious with because Bobby was a bit too close to home for me. If you had taken him out of Company, and if Sondheim had have taken him, sorry, not you, and focused on these married couples, I might have enjoyed it a little bit more without feeling like I was triggered. Here I wasn't triggered. This did that a lot better in terms of, but it wasn't exactly clear. I didn't know there was more than 2 couples. That's the thing. So that wasn't exactly clear. And I think that's where I was sort of feeling like if there was a bit of difference in genres or interpretation, maybe I would have gotten that. I hope you're not offended by any of these. I promise we take this all very seriously.
No, I think, that show, yeah, I wrote that show with Jimmy Roberts. And one of the reasons there's only 4 people in, people are like, oh, you wrote it, so it gets produced a lot because there's only 4 people. I'm like, no, I always love theater I always love seeing actors when people play multiple roles and get a chance to really stretch themselves. So that's why we did that. And so there are 4 people, 2 men, 2 women. And the first act was is specifically about being single and all of the trials and tribulations of trying to find everyone. And then at the the end of the act, you find someone, a couple gets married, and then the second act is about what happens after that, which is marriage, kids, sometimes divorce, we deal with widowhood, all that kind of stuff. So even though it's a review and has 4 different, people who keep morphing into different characters, it's that. But and in 2018, we actually did a new version of it, which hasn't been recorded yet, but there's another version to license, and a lot of theater companies do, though some still do the old one, where we actually added to sketches now with gay couples and sort of the same sketches. We added a couple more. We trimmed some of the more dated stuff and put some newer stuff in, though it's essentially the same show, which was sort of fun to do too, because what happened, like over the years, theater companies would say, hey, can we make this couple a same-sex couple? And we were like, sure, that's this enough. Like, for instance, the 2 parents, the baby song, which is a sketch prior to that, that's a sketch about what happens when you have a couple, and they're really fun, and then they have a baby, and then you go to visit, and all they talk about is the baby.
Yep.
So, we made that 2 guys who were just gay couple. All they thought they were really fun, and all they talk about is the baby now. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So we, we modernized it a bit, but it's still the same show. But that was the first show I ever wrote, and I was very fortunate it was so successful and had such a long run.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's so relatable, I think.
Yeah.
But you need to call it now. I love you. You're perfect. Now changed.
Oh, now it's changed. That's true. There you go.
Yeah.
I got you. Well, that's good. That's right. Yeah. No, and it's also that show. What's been great about that show over the years is we call it, as you said, it's relatable, and we call it the nudge show, because the actors in the first production of that kept going to us, people are nudging themselves, nudging whoever they're with. They're like, that's you.
Yeah.
That's you. That's my aunt. Oh, that's us. So we start out calling it the nudge show, and I'm like, oh, that's what the show is. The more it mirrors everyone's life, the better. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, and look, that was reflected in it, definitely, and
right.
That's obviously a lyrical thing more than a music thing, obviously, which like as I just wanted to, like, it's my creativity. Whenever I listen to any of these shows, like some of them I want to play with, and you know what I mean, and get my hands on it, but I'm not allowed to, obviously, because I'm not a professional in fucking New York. Am I? Part of my language. I don't know if the PR company wants us to swear or not, but I'm being very well behaved today. Spencer, you're with us. How did you go with this album?
Yeah, I, for some reason, had never heard of the show, which was really surprising to me after being familiar with your work for so long, and then also just generally New York theater for so long. And I also listened to the album for the first time and loved it. And I was reading about it. It was in the West Side Theater, great theater for a long tenant. Right now Little Shop is there and has been there, being the perfect production of Little Shop that's running in a tiny off-Broadway theater like we need there to be. Yeah, I loved the score, and it was so different than a lot of the other stuff that you've written that I was familiar with, that I really enjoyed. Just like the difference. It doesn't sound like, there's so many new musicals right now, and a lot of them sound the same. And considering I see all of them, sometimes you walk out of them like, oh, this sounds like the one that I saw last week.
Yeah. Jimmy Roberts, the composer, we were writing it, because each of the sketches were different. He said, I wanted each of the songs to have a different sound.
Yeah.
They're genre, but they're in a pop music genre, but they're also quite, theatrical and melodic. And he also said, a lot of the shows have a drummer and a bass, or a piano, drums, bass, like smaller off-Broadway shows. And he goes, I want something different. And he came up with the violin idea, which is really, I think, distinct and quite beautiful. And also, it's a comedy, and it's somehow the music and the arrangement of the 2-piece band actually supports the comedy. So all kudos to Jimmy Roberts.
Also, in a way, comedy and tragedy.
Yeah,
with the piano and the violin, which it wasn't necessarily a criticism. It was more I could hear the potential of some of these songs being bigger if you add more. like because they are
Mhm.
great songs, like relatability, but also melodic, and,
Yeah.
and some of these, some of the, well, not these reviews, that sounds very disrespectful. Some of sort of the reviews or song cycles aren't so flexible. Like I
Mhm.
love William Finn's Elegies, but it's kind of depressing. Like there's not much you could do with that show because it's all sort of, you're commenting on the dead. There's not, you know what I mean? There's not, you can't take it very many places. I don't think. Maybe you could if you've got the balls to. This one, I think you could. I think you could.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it done in little space, like little clubs, like there are waiters and the waiters sort of perform it. I've seen it done in bigger, like 1,000-seat theaters. So it is a very flexible show. And I know when like colleges do it, sometimes they'll have 20 people perform. You could actually divide it up too if you want.
Yeah. Oh, so see, I could all that because we take these shows basically on, if there's not a pro shot, we take them purely on the album, and so that's sort of
Right.
how we have to judge this, and all of that was very clear that it could be done in that way. Like, what's the last 5 years? You couldn't do that with 20 people.
Right.
It's no disrespect to that show because it existed.
Yeah.
In its own,
It's 2 people. Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
it's so versatile in that there's so many different types of married couples out there, and I'm not surprised it was the Nudge show because that nudge nudge wink wink was there all the way through it, even just in the tone of the music, very much so,
Mhm.
conveying that emotion. What a shame I didn't get to see Julia Morris in this. Did you fly over for it?
I did not. No.
No.
They're my dogs.
Oh yay! I love puppies.
What video game would you like to see made into a musical? What musical would you like to play as a video game? Also, it kind of two-handed.
Oh, all right. That's interesting. Like, what world would I want to enter? I mean, I would like to see my musical, The Toxic Avenger, made into a video game. I think that would be really fun to do that. And what musical would I want to see? I won't pick mine. Made into a video game. Let me think about that. Something, because it would need to be like another world. I love when musicals take us to other worlds, and I love when musicals take us to fun worlds. I want to see the first musical I ever saw. I bet no one has ever answered this question. The first musical I ever saw, and one of my favorite, certainly books of musicals, one of my favorite musicals of all time. I would like the video game of 1776, which you Aussies might not embrace, to be a video game, because I think it would be really cool to like have to go and have to figure out how to pass the Declaration of Independence through the Continental Congress.
Yeah.
So if someone could get on that, I think that's a huge moneymaker.
Someone turned Grease into a video game, Joe, so I'm sure it's possible.
Oh, I'm sure they have. Yes.
Give me 1 week. All right, give me 1 week and I will come up with a full concept for a 1776, the musical game. And it can't just be based on the Declaration of Independence. It has to be based around that musical. All right, game on.
Yeah. No, it's exciting, that idea. I'm sure people are doing it as we speak. Yeah.
Yep, that's it. Oh, anyways, well, one thing is clear. I love you. You're perfect. Now don't change the channel while we go to an ad break. G'day listeners, Aaron here. While you're topping up your coffees, did you know that you can support our show and go on a fantastically scary adventure at the same time? Go to www.thetonistantales.com/bookstore to grab your copy of The Toniston Tales, a darkly funny Aussie trilogy about a young boy who rescues injured animals in his spare time and the roller coaster ride he's taken on by a literal fish out of water. Written by me, the village idiot of Thrash and Treasure, you'll come to love Toniston Turnbull and the dozens of wacky characters that he meets along the way. And here is a sneak peek. Landing with a thud that echoes throughout the whole cottage, Toniston instantly rips off the manky shoes gifted to him by Milfred and tosses them into the corner behind a blue barrel. Without a second thought, the bully races down the hallway to the backmost room of the house and leaps behind his uncomfortable makeshift hay bed, then waits, and waits, and then waits some more, until finally, what seems like an eternity later, muffled growls start vibrating through the thin walls of Cubpaw's cottage. He tries to control his breathing, but his heart is racing way too fast. Toniston ducks down further. Nothing should be able to see him, but he can't be sure they won't smell him. The gruff growling grows louder. Toniston presses his ear against the cold, chipped, chalky wall. He thinks he can make out phrases like, "Where is it?" and "Give us the merge," though not much else. It's all too mumbled, and he's shaking too much. But it doesn't matter anymore. The front door of the cottage slams open with a harder, louder cracking thud than it ever had before. A dozen or so stomping footsteps enter. The cottage shakes uncontrollably as if it is as terrified as our friend the bully is. Toniston panics. He's trapped in a corner with a slew of sharks on his trail. He makes a sudden rash decision. Ripping aside the thick animal hide curtain, Toniston leaps through the small oval-shaped window head first, landing on a crate filled with hay sitting outside it. Mustering every ounce of manliness he has not to react verbally as he lands with a crunch on the sharp, pin-like hay. It pierces his skin in several places, but thankfully, in his panicked state, the bully becomes numb to the pain. Counting his blessings but not his chickens, Toniston struggles out of the crate by throwing his legs over and levering himself up, causing the coral underneath his feet to snap. He loses balance and tumbles. To describe the pain of tumbling face first down a steep hill of hard, sharp, deadly-shaped coral would require far too many swear words than this author would be allowed to publish, so let's just say it hurt. A lot. With one last somersault, Toniston's legs fly first over the cliff's edge. Crunch. His left hand grabs hold of the outmost jagged knob of coral. The stocky body of the 10-year-old child sways rapidly back and forth like some sort of death-defying pendulum. He gasps for air, or from shock, not even Toniston can tell. All he knows is above him a deadly coral cliff and deadlier sharks. Below him, larger, sharper coral under a sea of giant, sharp spikes of natural metal. His head throbbing and vision too blurred with bright red splotches to be able to see clearly for too long. His face is dripping with blood. It runs down his shirt front, tickling him in the process. But all he can do is swing there. It's moments like these that a boy really needs his mum. Unfortunately, while Toniston's life hangs in the balance, on Earth his life was, dishonestly, being celebrated by all at Gumbaya Primary School after news of the bully's disappearance had spread like wildfire through the tiny town, then onto the music industry before eventually reaching the wider world. Rock music fans, specifically those of Muzzletop, had flocked to the outskirts of Melbourne, leaving wreaths, band posters, and hand-drawn tributes to honour the missing son of their favourite singer. Although none of them knew the boy, many had seen him standing on the side of the stage of the band's concerts alongside Tina. Also, at the time of his disappearance, hundreds of the world's entertainment media lined the streets outside the school and, sadly, outside Tina's house. Wanting any word they could get their greasy hands on, the gossip came in thick and fast as snide, bored neighbours took it upon themselves to speculate and make up stories for their 5 minutes of fame. Inside the house, the phone ringing 10, 15 times a day from nosy TV stations, hounding the poor, terrified mother, there was no escape. And whilst Tina was never polite in her declination, still they persisted. "Call me again and I'll punch you in the nose," she promised. The school's principal, Mr. Patterson, had himself realized how cold and nasty it would look if Toniston Turnbull's former victims didn't at least pretend to mourn his disappearance. And thus, with an added paranoia of becoming a suspect, Mr. Patterson set out to overcompensate with memorials and dedications to the boy who touched all our lives with his love of animals. Mr. Patterson felt satisfied his school's image was intact. The largest memorial from the school came in the form of a service in the gymnasium. With every student, teacher, news reporter, and local police in attendance, Mr. Patterson sought to show the world just how much Toniston had meant to the school. The service would have made the bully puke. From the awful school choir butchering his least favourite songs, to the obnoxious releasing of the white doves, Mr. Patterson may have been satisfied his memorial service paid tribute, but Toniston is far too cynical for that. And yet, whilst hundreds of people sat on the cold plastic seats in the Gumbaya Primary School auditorium, not one person in attendance truly knew Toniston when he was around. But all alone, In her large house, the animals all shunned outside, Tina Turnbull sits with her umpteenth glass of wine, ignoring the umpteenth phone call from friends, fans, and family, but most sad of all, wondering, for the umpteenth time, what she could have said to her only child to have brought the two of them closer together. A now broken photo of Trent Turnbull and an infant Toniston only hours after his birth sits at her feet under the table. Tina simply doesn't care about the million tiny shards of glass cutting up her feet. She just wants her son back. And as if joined at the soul, while dangling from the lavender-coloured dead coral cliff face, somewhere in his head voice, Tina's cries are heard by the boy. His face scrunches up, but then it relaxes. I can do this. Grab your copy of The Toniston Tales from thetonistonTales.com/bookstore today. Hooroo! Anyways, we're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Spencer, and we're saying La Heya to La Jolla because we're joined by Babbitt Scribe, Joe DiPietro. I'm saying that correctly, yes?
You are saying it absolutely correctly.
Oh, thank goodness for that. Anyways, it's now running until December 10th. So we've just got a few questions about your hopes and dreams for the future.
Okay.
Now, firstly, we're going to humanize you to our listeners.
All right.
What's one normal, everyday thing that everyone else seems to be able to do perfectly, but you fail miserably at?
Ironing.
Ironing, yep.
I am incapable of taking a piece of clothing and putting it on an ironing board and making it smoother.
Yep. Awesome.
How's that? So I can never work in a tailor or be a maid or anything because I'm just, I don't know how it's possible that things always come out more wrinkled.
Yep. You're not burning them at least?
No, I'm not burning them.
Yep.
But, and my partner, Derek, is, as a result, like, he knows the good thing about being inept about something like that is that he does all my ironing for me because he knows, like, it just frustrates him too much to see what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yep, that's it. Well, you ask anybody who's lived with me, Joe, they'll say, my problem is putting up the washing after it's ironed.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Anyway, Spencer, what about you? I've never asked you this question. Sleeping.
That I'm terrible at
Yeah.
or hate doing.
No, that you're terrible at, that you fail miserably. Like everyone else can do it fine, but you're hopeless. You see all the things I'm hopeless at every day.
Honestly, I think it's taking a break.
Yes,
and
I'll
like
agree.
it's not having like 12 million projects going on at once.
Yes.
And it's like working on one project at once.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of people who can do it. I can't. I need to have like 40 million things circling around me.
Yeah.
I'm like that too, Spencer. With shows, everyone who knows me will say I juggle several shows at once. So, yeah.
Yep, that's literally me in the past weeks. Anyways, we'll move on. Spencer.
Yeah, I mean, I had read up on the La Jolla run prior to it happening because I have some friends out there and I was trying to get them to sneak in to see it and tell me how it was. But you know, with a cast like that, and especially in a world premiere, how do you go into a world premiere with a mindset where you have this cast that is a little bit more higher profile than a lot of other, like a lot of world premieres you just do as workshops sort of things, and you have, you know, a more high profile cast. Does that give you more pressure with your world premiere, or is that
a little more pressure? But I think what you know is you have a spotlight on you, maybe normally more than you would. With that always has more pressure and more people maybe being suddenly somehow get more skeptical about it. But you know, with this cast, we had done 2 or 3 readings prior to the production, and several of them had done readings of that. I had written it for Matthew Broderick. We had worked together before, and we had talked about other things to work on, and we both liked this idea. So I knew Matthew was attached, and he, you know, liked the script and where I took it. So he said yes. So I just feel like very lucky to work with a group this accomplished and talented. One thing which Chris and I made sure was that we wanted to hire really nice people who, you know, incredible cast, but they're all people who are really fun to have in a rehearsal room. And we knew all of them, besides being talented, the questions they'll ask about the script and what things they'll try with the script during rehearsals are all going to be very fun and creative and positive. So I sort of went in with a lot of excitement about this cast. There wasn't, sometimes you work with people and there's like, oh God, I got to avoid this person today because I just can't really deal with them today. But this was not true at all. It's really a wonderful group of people. Obviously seriously talented and very, very funny actors. So I went, so it was a very joyous rehearsal period. But when you go to a new show, we knew we were going to be making changes all the time. And we did. We cut a lot of things. We, tweaked some things. And even now when I see it up, I'm like, oh, for the next production, I'll still tweak some things. So the cast maybe put a little more pressure on me, but as soon as I got in the rehearsal room with them, it was just really fun to be working with that level of talent.
Just on cutting things, can I throw it in there? I speak to, like, I'm a writer myself, publish novels and sort of educational plays, right? And even I myself have trouble sometimes letting go of things that fit the narrative, or that feel like they're necessarily but they may not be ultimately. How strongly would you say to someone you need to get over it and just cut it out? Because if you're working with people like that and you're willing to cut material that might be funny or it might be poignant or whatnot, but it doesn't fit with the rhythm of what you're doing. Yeah, how do you handle, like, what advice do you give to people like me?
People like you. I mean, I'm a big believer in cutting. I'm working on a project right now where my collaborators called me Machete Joe because I'm like, oh, let's get rid of that. Well, it's a 2-page scene. You worked on it for, a month. Nah, yeah, I know. We had to get it on paper. We had to see what that contributed. It seemed important. And now that we see it, it seems superfluous or repetitive or not as interesting as the rest of the show. I think with this group, they were very smart. There's one scene where Babbitt in the second act, he's a man who's well over 40, and he sort of befriends this young woman. She starts hanging out with her group of friends who are these 1920s, 20-something bohemians. And we had this long sequence where they met, they chatted, they danced a bit, they chatted some more, and they danced a bit more. And after the first couple of previews, I'm like, oh my God, this is like, they don't need to keep all that chat. Like, I literally want to cut a page and a half out of this 4-page scene. So, and it was sort of cutting the whole cast is in it. So I'm like, I'm going to tell them. And so I said, so anyway, so tomorrow I think so I want everyone to know, I just sort of prep them. I'm going to really cut a lot of that scene. And almost to a person, they all went, oh, thank you. Because they knew it wasn't working like we had hoped it would. So they were the first to say, oh, cut whatever you want. We don't care. We're in process. And these are pros, so they really know that. And they know that cutting isn't an insult to them. And sometimes I'll say, I want to cut this line, and they'll make a case for it. And sometimes I'll cut it anyway. And sometimes they make a good enough case that I'll leave it. But when I get in my mind that I want something to be cut, and the director, in this case, Chris Ashley, agrees with me, I do wind up cutting it. And most actors are good with that. And every time I don't cut something because an actor talked me out of it, I see it 2 days later. I'm like, that was a mistake. I should have cut it. But it's hard. Cutting is hard.
My favorite show of yours, Diana, which I saw 5 times when it was on Broadway.
Hey.
And I'm wearing my lovely Diana the Musical sweatshirt right now, as it is freezing here. Changed heavily over the course of its run. I saw like the 3rd preview post-COVID, and then saw 3 more performances, and then I was at the closing weekend. I was at one of the performances, and just seeing the changes in that. I mean, that show changed heavily.
Yeah, well, that was thank you for the fans of that show are so intense. We're actually doing a big or not we, but British producers and director are doing a big concert of it in London in a couple of weeks, actually.
Many of my friends are flying out.
Oh, great. Yeah, there's a lot of folks flying to see it, including, unfortunately, I'm going to be in another workshop, but David Bryan is there, and it's going to be really something. 18-piece orchestra and 40-piece chorus is going to be really thrilling, I think. But unlike plays, musicals are so much more complicated because there are so many more people working on it, and there's so many more elements. So, when I cut a line in a play, it generally doesn't affect the costume change. It doesn't affect the set move. It doesn't affect something. But if you cut 4 lines in a musical, there's generally someone doing a quick change off stage. There's generally a turntable or a set piece that has to be reprogrammed. There's sometimes orchestrations that need to be written. Yeah, but so it's more complicated, but I always say you can improve shows by cutting really, really amazingly so. You can improve shows by snipping there or that. So a show like Diana, which is a big complex show telling a big story, we really also use the audience as our test folks every day. Like I can always tell, oh, they're really into the scene, or, oh no, that's confusing, or, so that's sort of how we did it. And I think musicals get changed more than anything, just because they're so complex. And I think, I'm sure everyone on this call knows when musicals work, they work better than any entertainment medium possible. They're just so thrilling and moving. The storytelling combined with live music, when it all works, when it all comes together, is really thrilling. So you have to work hard, though, to make sure it all comes together and everyone's vision is the same. And, Diana was something we worked on probably until a day or two before it opened.
Diana was obviously a real life person, but you've written quite a few mirror to society projects, and especially with Babbitt as well, being that sort of white picket fence, middle class society. That's very mirror to society. Does that ever become a tightrope, not putting those around you directly on the stage? And did that ever play out whilst developing this adaptation? Because I make a point not to. I'd never want to base any characters off my friends.
Yeah, you know what? I have to say, this has happened. It happened actually in a couple of sketches, and I Love You Perfect Now Change, where there are a couple of sketches in there where I'm like, ooh, a friend of mine who went through this or something similar, this really is based on them.
Yep.
And they'll see the show and they'll have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, I've never had anyone see a show of mine and say, that's me, even though sometimes I'm like, how can they not realize that? So I like you, I worry about that, but I've never had a problem. But then there are some scenes like I Love You Perfect Now Change, the scene where the family fights when they're driving on the highway of love. I can tell you that when that show first opened, the number of people who come to me and say, you wrote that scene about us, didn't you? Me and my husband. I'm like, no, everyone fights in the car.
Yes.
It's a small box that we are trapped in trying to get somewhere in a collaborative effort. So every couple and family fights in the car. Everyone, like my sisters, they all think it's about them.
Yep. That was actually my follow-up, and has the reverse happens that someone's thought it was about them and it wasn't, but clearly it's happened a lot.
It's happened a lot. Yeah.
I can imagine. Spencer?
What does collaboration with all the different departments, what does that mean to you? What is the most challenging part of that large scale collaboration?
The producers. Always the producers, Spencer.
Yes. It's, musicals, you use the word large scale, and that's the thing about like something like I Love You Perfect Now Change, 4 people, 2 pianos. It's almost like a play, right? So those collaborations are between you and the director and the actors, and if there's a composer, and those are very personal. There's not a lot of money on the line. Once you start talking about a musical that has dreams of Broadway, let's say, and dreams of world domination, you start talking about a lot of money and a lot of opinions and people getting very nervous very easily. I always say, if you're a writer of a new Broadway musical, you meet a new producer at the back of the theater at every preview, meaning that there's someone who put $5,000, $100,000, $500,000, and they always say, oh, hi, Joe, how are you? I'm one of the producers. And it's sort of nice to all them. And sometimes they'll offer opinions, which they shouldn't, really in a well-run show. The lead producer is funneling all the notes from all the many of people who, are well-meaning and want the show to be a success, but put money in and want their opinion to be heard. But even if the show costs $15 million and let's say 15 entities put in $1 million, which you can't have 15 voices giving you thoughts because your head would just, I can guarantee you the notes are always oftentimes contradictory, what it is, how it should be, how edgy it should be, how gentle it should be. I mean, how positive, how negative the show should be. So you always have those different thoughts. So you really need someone to funnel those thoughts to you. And then, look, if you don't want to collaborate, don't write musicals, especially large scale musicals, because it's a constant collaboration between yourself and your co-writers. Most musicals have co-writers, and your director, but also your choreographer. That's a huge influence on a musical. And you all have to be making the same show. I mean, the big sort sort of, I would say advice when I have collaborators. I'm like, I always like to get to know my collaborators a little outside of the process, so we can not just relate as coworkers, but as friends, people I know who we can just talk things through, because there will always be issues to talk through, and there's always any show, the ones that have been very successful and the ones that haven't gone as successfully as I hoped, there are always bumps in the road getting to your final destination with it. So you better have people who you can talk to. You don't even have to like them always, but you have to be able to talk to them like human beings and rationally talk through issues with the show and what the show is. I mean, I think that's the old thing. If you're not all writing or creating the same show, you're in trouble. If one person is creating a big boofy comedy and the other is creating a sharp, dark satire, you're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah. Kids out there, you don't need to worry about cutting your own work, because one day a producer is going to do it for you.
Well, they'll suggest, cuts are, I don't know. I enjoy cuts. Sometimes you always think you need to overwrite things a little bit. And then you always find your audience is smarter than you imagine maybe they are. That they'll, and sometimes one of the best pieces of advice I ever got about writing was, every song cue you write, try cutting 1 or 2 lines before it. And which sounds a little strange, but you think you need to write, I love you, I love you. And then they sing, I love you. And oftentimes if you cut the transitional material, you sort of jump to the song and it's more surprising and it's just more delightful in the fact that we're filling in the blanks and you're not leading the horse to water.
What's great with actually 3 of your shows, they have pro shots.
I love pro shots. I wish more shows would have them actually, but they're expensive. But when they're done well, I think Aaron said before that pro shots are when regional theaters do your show. They look at them to see, and sometimes they'll go on their own way in their own productions, but oftentimes they're very influential. But, I just do think and I'm always amazed who sees what and who someone becomes a fan of a show by a pro shot. Yeah. And as a collaborator, I was very involved in them all. Diana was very unusual in that we shot it during the height of the pandemic. So we had to be sequestered in a hotel for a month, cut off from our family and friends as we were doing this. This was before the vaccine, so we were very lucky to get to do it. And I love that pro shot. And it's apparently one of the most rewatched shows on Netflix right now. And that pro shot has brought new fans to the show and people who had never, seen it, didn't get a chance to see its live runs, can see what the original production was. But the only thing I regret about that is that we couldn't use a live audience, because as you've been in that audience, Aaron, you could see how they reacted to it, how much fun they had, how funny it was. And, I think some people who took shots at it were like, oh, this should be a super serious, they think this is super serious. I'm like, no, it's a really big, fun, campy, joyous musical that I think is sort of how I look at Diana's life kind of thing. But we couldn't have a studio audience because we couldn't have anyone else but us in the theater at the time. So that was a bit of a disappointment, but I love how it turned out. I love the pro shot, and the Memphis pro shot gets watched all the time. So and I think Olivia Perfect Now Change, there was a pro shot also during the pandemic in London. They shot on stage with 4 very clever actors. Yeah, so I'm a big pro shot guy, and at that point I'm like, the writing's done, so my involvement is generally almost as a cheerleader. So you sort of like any time there are cameras, like the writer is like, thank you for the words, now sit over there, so let us film it and do our work. Just
on pro shots, good segue for me, Spencer. Okay, a couple of years ago, there was a production of Memphis in Melbourne, right? And I've seen the pro shot of Memphis. I love it. It's a fantastic show. And we've had James on the show, James Monroe Iglehart, in one of our best episodes ever. So funny. Anyways, okay, so this production it's opening up at Chapel Off Chapel in Melbourne, which is this tiny theatre in a church.
Yeah.
But the footage they used in their advertisement was the pro shot footage from the Broadway production. I'm like, there's no way you're doing that production in Chapel Off fucking Chapel. Why are you using the Broadway footage to advertise your pro-am show? So totally against that, and they did not get my money. So I didn't get to see it, because what the set was, it wasn't the amazing Broadway set, Joe. It was a wall with records fucking posted to it.
Right.
And they used the Broadway footage to advertise it to me. I'm like, don't treat me like I'm an idiot. We're not fools. People at home are not
Right.
children. Like JP on this show, he thinks I'm crazy for feeling like this. I'm like, no, they tried to catfish me. They tried to catfish me for my $50 for a ticket, and I would have gotten a wall with vinyls stuck to them, not a fly tower or things coming up from the stage, not a big, massive ensemble. It was in a church. Sorry. Anyways, I was anti that.
The Funny Girl
I'm
tour.
glad you got that.
The Funny Girl
Thank
tour
you.
is still using footage of Leah Michelle.
Oh,
She's not in it. Like, people at home, don't be going there expecting Leah Michelle. You're not going to get it. However, can we start a campaign to get a proper professional tour of Memphis to Australia? Because I would like to see it properly. So
yeah.
start that campaign. Please, producers in Australia, get a proper transfer of it. Even if we
Yes.
got a new set, a proper big production of it that's not
Right.
vinyl stuck to a wall in a church. Anyways, how important has diplomacy been?
I'm sorry, how important is what?
Diplomacy or diplomacy. Apparently, I say
Diplomacy.
it wrong.
Diplomacy. Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of them.
No.
Tomato.
I think I'm a pretty diplomatic person, actually. I think it's a good question. I do, there are some creators who, are a little like maybe more aggressively loud than me in their opinions in a rehearsal room, and a little more strident and a little more unyielding about their thoughts. I am very fortunate that I get to work for the last few years with incredibly talented people. So I love collaborating with the vast, vast majority of them. And, I always try to learn something from them. And I always say, if you can, work with people who are more talented than you, because you really do learn something from them. So I think diplomacy is great. And, I've been around long enough, and I've been through all sorts of experiences, most of them good, not all of them good in theater. So I've learned to really pretty much how to avoid the bad ones. And part of that is bringing your kindest, most open self to a rehearsal hall. And I feel that the writer is someone, if you're making, even, I'm not saying I'm not working hard. I don't have opinions. I'm not making changes all the time. But if you have this open, creative, collaborative aura about you, I've found that the people I've worked with have responded in kind. So I actually think diplomacy in such a collaborative, complicated field is a very good skill to have. And there are certainly people who are known as difficult to work with because of their lack of diplomacy, that I think it's pretty much hurt their careers in many ways.
Yeah, I can imagine. Collaborating does teach you a lot of things. With Spencer, I've learned patience.
What's a piece of theater that has inspired you, that you've seen post-pandemic, that has made you feel like we're back, and that this industry is moving on from this thing that happened?
Like, what's the Tom Cruise of theater?
The Tom Cruise.
Well, he saved cinema. So what saved theater for you?
I have trouble believing Top Gun saved cinema. That to me is a little sad. But maybe true, but a little sad. I don't know. It's interesting. I've seen some really good theater recently. This is recency bias, but I just saw a friend of mine, Wade McCullum, wrote this, starring in this one-person show off Broadway called Make Me Gorgeous, about this from many, many years ago, this drag queen who lived this very unusual life when being gay and wearing drag was even less acceptable than it is today. And, and he's been working on it with this collaborator named Donnie for years, and they developed in this tiny theater in Portland, Oregon, and they just opened it. It was their dream to bring it to New York, and everyone says, "Oh, I don't know if you should do that. It's hard. New York is hard. There's no off-Broadway anymore. This story's been told." And I just went to their opening night in this little theater called Theater 46, and it was just thrilling, and the audience loved it. And I was like, "Wow, you've actually done this with what I'm sure is a very very limited budget, though it'll look great. It's a one-person show, but Wade is just fantastic throughout. And it's called Make Me Gorgeous. The name is the title of the play. And I was like, wow, this is like what theater can be. Like this, it can be really something you don't get in any other medium. And it's intimate and thrilling and deceptively simple. And you think, oh, theater's always going to survive.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. I've just changed my last question there. I'll change it to this one. What would your drag queen name be?
Oh my God. You know what? I had thought of one the other day, believe it or not, and now I've forgotten it. I feel like I should say misunderstood, but everyone probably says that. But then we all feel misunderstood, so that's probably boring. I'm gonna have to think about that one. I don't have a. Can I do a segue and tell you, instead of what my drag queen name would be, my autobiography title would be? This is a question I like asking people.
Yep.
What would your autobiography title be?
So, okay, instead, what would your autobiography title be, or your memoir?
Yeah, the title of my autobiography would be, I Hope You're Not the Author. Someone said that to me many years ago during the West Coast premiere of I Love You, Perfect Now Change. I'd seen the show was a big hit out there, and I'd seen it a few times. And I was standing at intermission outside in the lobby of the theater, and this guy about 2 or 3 times came out, went to the bathroom, came out, made a phone call, came out, had a cigarette, and clearly not enjoying the show. And he just saw me standing there the whole time, had no idea who I was. And he looks at me and he says, "Do you know how much longer the show is?" And I say, "I think it's about 5 more minutes." And he looks at me and he goes, "Good." And then he starts going back inside, and then with great comic timing, he turns to me and says, "I hope you're not the author," and laughs and goes inside the theater. I was like, I wish I got your name, sir, because that will be my autobiography title. So yeah, I hope you're not the author.
I hate to break it to you, but your drag queen name is right there. Jody Pietro.
Oh, Jody.
Jody is a girl's name.
I've had people call me Jody Pietro. Yeah, I have.
Okay,
say that. So there you go.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't mean it as a drag name.
Well, there's your drag queen.
Yeah, I was talking to some interviewers doing that online, and they clearly did not a lot of research because, hi, Jody DiPietro. Jody Pietro. And I was like, yeah. They were surprised.
That's why I asked if I made sure I had got your name correctly, because we have a lot of guests on that. Even Anne Harada gets called Anna Harada. All different things, and it's like there's only A's. A's are the only vowel in her name. How do you get that wrong? Yeah, I always make sure to check. And yet, anyways, thank you so much for joining us. It has been an absolute joy. I've had so much fun. Thank you so much.
Had so much.
Where can people?
Thank you to both, and thank you for your well-researched my introduction. Very impressive. Much appreciated.
Awesome. Good. Do you know how intimidating that is, Joe? Goodness gracious me, to perform like an idiot in front of legends like yourself. But when it's a writer, when you're a writer, I know that you guys are judging me. You're judging every sentence structure. You're judging the wordplay and everything. So every time we've got a writer on, I have to outdo myself from the last time. So I hope I did.
And you did.
The proof will be in the episodes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So yeah. Before we let you go, where can people find you on the social media?
I am not too big on the social media, but if you can find me on Facebook, believe it or not, because I'm old, and I am also on Twitter.
Nope, that's not old. That's not it.
Thanks for being a Diana fan, Aaron. Okay.
No, Spencer is. He's seen it. I'm in Melbourne.
Sorry.
I don't see anything.
Oh yes.
Never been to New York. One day I'll get to New York.
One day we'll be back. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Alrighty, you may be able to tell we are running a little bit late with episodes this month. Episode 107 was meant to be posted last week. This episode was meant to be posted yesterday, which was a Wednesday. Instead, it's now our Thrash Giving episode, posted on Thanksgiving Thursday for our American listeners. So here is some extra doubly Thrash Givings. A huge thank you to Joe DiPietro for joining us. It was such an incredible honor discussing his work with him and his career. Goodness gracious me, what a privilege doing this show is. And another ginormous thank you to Becky and the team at La Jolla Playhouse. We've all heard of La Jolla. It is an iconic theatre around the world to everybody who is into musical theatre. So to be given this chance was a real thrill, and I hope we did good. And there's an open invitation for the iconic cast to join us, he says with a wink in his eye. For listeners in the La Jolla or Greater San Diego area, Babbitt is actually sold out, which is sad for you, but amazing for the cast and the crew and creatives of Babbitt. So congratulations to them and chookers for the rest of the run, obviously. But for the listeners, if you want to try to get a ticket, check the website in the details below, just in case, because apparently they may release a few tickets here and there, cancellations, that sort of thing. We are living in a COVID world. Anyways, our socials are at Thrash and Treasure or at Thrash and Treasure Podcast. Google search, whatever. The details are in the description below. We've just recently dropped 2 new shows, Around the World in 80 Plays, hosted by Lizzie B and Alfie Parker, which you would have heard a sneak preview of before, and Opening Doors, Navigating the Future of the Theatre Industry, hosted by our very own Spencer the Broadway Spy. Next week, Mr. J-Wags is back with one of our craziest episodes yet, unless I decide to move that and swap things around. I'm not sure. It has been the craziest 10 weeks, like you wouldn't... 10 weeks? See, I can't even get my words right. It's been the craziest 10 days, like you wouldn't believe. I need a couple of days off. But anyways, we've still got episodes coming up in the next few weeks, so as if I get to take time off, because I'll need to edit them. Anyways, to my 3 co-hosts, I am so truly thankful. Jonathan, Matt, Spencer, everything you guys do and bring to this show is absolutely amazing, and I'm so thrilled, and it is a joy and a privilege working with you guys. I don't need a public holiday to tell me when to be thankful of what you guys bring to this show and for working with me on this, but I do need a holiday, full stop. Anyways, to you at home, enjoy your family roasts and all the food. Be good to each other, so no fighting at the dinner table. Thank you for listening, and we shall see you next time. Happy Thrash Giving! That's it. Take care.
Bye.
Like quicksand!